Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Investor More, and I am standing outside a house that needs some work, but this is not one I'm buying. This is one I might be selling for another investor. So once in a while, I still sell houses as a broker for friends and family, and this is a property that's been a rental for over 20 years. It needs some love. It's had some long-term tenants, and the seller of this wanted me to walk through and tell them what they should fix, what they shouldn't fix, where they'll get the most money out of doing repairs or upgrades on this house. And this is a tricky situation because if I'm doing it myself, I know my crew, I know how much it costs, I know how long it will take, and then I usually double that based on what I think will happen, and that comes to be pretty accurate with what actually happens. With other investors, they're not using my crew or my people. I don't know how long it will take. It might be more expensive. It can be a little trickier advising on them. And maybe some of my people can do a few things there, but I've got my people busy all the time, nonstop pretty much. So I don't want them to take out 2 months to do another project when I could be doing my own. So this house was built in 1984. It's kind of a cool house with the vaulted ceilings and open floor plan. It's a 4-level, but it's definitely been used quite a bit. So on the outside, it needs paint. It had some rotten siding on it. And when you're looking at properties like this to sell, the number one thing you want to look at is, will it pass FHA financing guidelines? Because you're most likely going to sell it to an owner-occupant. They're the majority of buyers, despite what you may hear in the media. 95% of the flips I do sell to owner-occupants, not investors. And they're going to be using FHA or conventional financing, and most conventional financing uses the same guidelines as FHA. So those are the main things to look at first. And this house needs a roof, which you have to have done for financing. You have to fix the rotten siding, and then any major items like electrical, broken windows, things like that would have to be done too. Now, I don't know if you noticed that. It had a lock on the pantry door. I'm hoping that was to lock kids out of the pantry and not lock them in. But I don't know what's happening here in this house. Fireplace, old carpet. So the concerns, first off, are the major items, making sure all the systems are done and qualify for financing. And we're trying to look at comps as well to say, hey, this house might be worth this much based on other houses that have sold in the neighborhood. If you do the bare minimum, there you can see some other siding damage, and it's pretty bad back here. So, maybe you're spending $20,000 to get it to pass financing, and it might be worth $380,000 to $400,000 as is, without doing anything. It might be worth $425,000 to like $440,000 if you do, the bare minimum. Make sure it qualifies for financing. Along the way, you could, if you're going to do some of those repairs, it would be smart to at least do flooring, paint as well, because that just makes a huge difference, even if you're not going all the way. And then you can start to look at, well, if you do everything and do a complete remodel, it might be worth $480,000, or maybe even tickling up to $500,000, maybe. Depends on how nice you make it. And then you have to consider, okay, it's going to take me, $40,000, $50,000 to make it great to get top dollar. But it's also going to take me 3 or 4 months, which means I've got 3 or 4 months of mortgage payments if you have a loan, of property taxes, utilities, other expenses at this property, and that can add up pretty quickly. So it might actually be, $60,000 you're spending. And so you have to think to yourself, is it worth it to sell for $485,000 versus maybe $390,000 if we're spending $60,000? That's a pretty decent return, but there's no guarantees in real estate. Maybe it sells for a little less. You never know. And then maybe the repairs go up a little bit. You never know. Maybe you don't have $60,000, right? That's a big one. That's why we end up buying a lot of properties and flip quite a few properties that are ugly, because people simply don't have the money. We're going in the basement here first. This is where we're at, just so you know. So there's so many things to consider. And maybe you do a halfway remodel where you're just doing the finance repairs that are needed and paint and carpet and some other stuff, and you're spending $30,000 or $40,000 on repairs, and that gets you up to $450,000. But maybe that's not worth it either. So it's really tricky trying to figure these things out. And that's why we really want to get awesome deals on our properties, because there's so many unknowns. It can take longer than you think. So many expenses. But when you already have a property like this, you don't have a choice on what you're buying it for, paying for it. It's more what makes sense to sell, what makes sense to do and not do. So in this situation, the investor does have the cash to do the work if they need to. Do they have the patience and stamina to go through the process? I'm not sure, because it can be a lengthy process and it can be frustrating. It can be, a lot can go wrong. Is it worth it to do the whole house and completely remodel it? Maybe. Honestly, if you're going to do some of it, I feel like it kind of makes sense to do all of it. And that's kind of how we look at our flips too. Whereas, just halfway doing it, you're still spending a lot of money on the roof and siding, and then you're painting anyway. And then it's like, well, it's only a little bit more to spruce up the kitchen some, get new appliances, get new counters, maybe paint those cabinets. The windows are okay, but there were some that definitely needed some work. So at that point, it's like, well, if you're doing windows, that adds up too. But having bad old windows, these are 40-year-old windows now, could chase off a lot of buyers too. So there's a lot to think about. And my advice is what I would do myself. And that would probably be to fix it up all the way and try and make it as nice as possible, get the most money you can. You could try selling it as is too, and you might get $100,000 less, but it might actually be a quicker sale and less hassle, and maybe worth it to the seller. And that's why some sellers do sell houses as is. They don't do repairs. They don't fix them up. They just want to get rid of them. Now, for me personally as an investor, the thing is, it's going to cost me a lot more money to come in here and fix it up than, say, a homeowner, because I've got financing costs, carrying costs, I've got commissions if I sell the property. So it's actually more expensive for another investor to come in and, rehab this house than someone who already owns it, or say an owner-occupant who might be able to pull a loan on a property that needs some repairs, maybe a local bank, or maybe they have cash or some other private financing where they can buy it, come in here, fix it up. So me as an investor would love to buy a house and fix it up, but I'd have to get it super cheap, probably closer to like $350,000. And honestly, other people are willing to pay more than me for this property, and that happens all the time. That's why it's been hard for us to find flips, because other people are willing to take on deals with less room, especially owner-occupants. And it makes sense for owner-occupants to come in here, do some sweat equity, buy the house, fix it up, if they can find the money to do it. Popcorn ceiling was rough on this too. That's something else you might have to do if you go all the way. So I understand why people are hesitant to do it, but it probably will get you the most money. So honestly, now that I'm making this video and analyzing everything, if I were to make a recommendation, I would say go all the way, fix it up. I'm not saying going crazy and gutting everything, but fix up the kitchen a little bit, fix up the bathrooms a little bit, fixtures, maybe windows, roof, siding, paint, flooring, a few other minor things. Try to get that top amount. If not, I'm almost thinking just sell it as is, and hopefully someone will come in here and find a way to get the financing to buy the property with those issues. But this investor did buy the property for $176,000 in 2002, so they'll be okay no matter what. They did kind of buy it before the market crashed, and still are doing just fine by holding that property. And this is actually one of the houses we just fixed up here. And we can show you, we don't go absolutely crazy with remodels and go overboard. And I think that's another issue that regular homeowners and people who aren't, always remodeling properties kind of get themselves into as well, as they go overboard. They spend too much on things that aren't needed. They spend $100,000 fixing up a property when $40,000 could have gotten close to the same sales price. And if you're living there, a lot of times you justify, hey, I can do all these repairs, it'll be super awesome and nice. But once you go to sell it, you don't realize that money back because you spent too much and added a lot of things that a lot of people just don't care about, or it's not worth it to them. So that's another issue to think about too, is you may have contractors who charge twice as much as our people do. And that's not uncommon. We work very hard to keep our prices down, and a lot of regular people just don't have access to those prices, or don't know prices, or don't have the time to find them. A lot of different things are needed to be considered when remodeling properties and trying to get them nice for that extra money. So that's what we've got. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hopefully, we'll have some updates on what happens with it, if it gets fixed up, if it doesn't get fixed up, what it sells for. I'm curious to see what happens too. Another risk with remodeling properties is the market could change. I don't think it's going to change drastically, but the longer it takes to remodel it, not only are there more costs, but there's more risk as things could change, but things could also go up too and help you out. So it's a two-way street. But a neat house, cool house, very interesting house. This is the type of house I would have loved to buy when I was first buying a house in this same time period. I think I paid $190,000 for mine that was a 4-level, slightly different area, a little better condition than this one is now, but I think that this one was in pretty decent shape when it was first purchased. All right, love to hear what you think. Love to hear if you have any insights or ideas. And of course, I'll have more videos of my own properties, businesses, laundromats, liquor store, all of that coming up soon. And hope you enjoyed the property.